Hey everyone, I'm Albert. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we're going to be creating an amazing 360-degree VR environment with the Stable Diffusion AI and Blender. And despite what you might think looking at this on your 2D monitor, it's not just a flat panorama. It's based on one, but this has 3D depth. So when you're seeing it in your Quest 2, you really feel like you're in there. And the best thing is, once you've mastered this technique, you can make a new environment in just 5 minutes. In fact, the one you're seeing right now is the one we'll be creating today. So let's jump right in. All the links to the stuff I'm using, like extensions, models, and so forth, can be found in the description below. So every time I mention something that you need, just check down there and you can download it via the links. First things first, of course, you need a functioning web UI installation of Stable Diffusion. You might recognize this one as the most popular, Auto 1111. But if you have anything else based on this, all of the process should work as well for you. Now, if you don't have one of these, also check the link in the description and install it, and then make sure you get comfortable using Stable Diffusion first, either using my tutorials on this channel or others before you continue with this tutorial. Otherwise, it could be a little frustrating. And make sure you have a Windows PC with an NVIDIA GPU before you do any of this, or it unfortunately will not work. Now, next up, you will need to install the following extensions for the 360 panoramas. First of all, the asymmetric tiling extension, because the normal tiling feature that's built into the UI will not be enough. We will be creating panoramas, so of course they need to be seamless on the x-axis when you turn around like this, but they do not need to be seamless up and down because ceiling and floor are two different things that should not be connected. So we need to install that extension to only tile on this axis, right? So the way you do that is you can go to the link, copy it, go to Stable Diffusion, Extensions, install from URL, paste it in there, and then hit install. You can also probably find it in the Available tab in Extensions, but that's such a long list by now that I just prefer doing it the manual way. And then once you have that installed, you'll find a new tab down here in your text-to-image and image-to-image tabs called asymmetric tiling, where you have a couple different options that we'll check out later. Next, you're going to need the Panorama Viewer extension. You install it the same exact way. And the cool thing with this is once you've created your image, you will have an extra little button here in your results where you can view it as a panorama, which is excellent for what we're doing today. And then one more extension, the depth map script. And that's going to help us create a depth map so we can actually make a little 3D environment out of our panorama results. So you install that as well, and then you'll discover you have a new tab over here called depth where you can drop your image and create a depth map out of it with a whole bunch of different models. More on that later. Now for the actual creation of your images, you will need a so-called LoRA, which is the 360 Diffusion LoRA. Now, this is basically a small model. If you don't know what a LoRA is, it's essentially like checkpoints, but much smaller and can be used with any model of your choice. And it just gives it that extra little bit of hint as to what you want to create. So you just download that. And once you have that LoRA file, you go into your Web UI folder, Models, LoRA, and just paste it in here. As you see, I've already done so. And then to call that, we'll see later in the prompt how we can activate that. And we're there already. It's time to create an image. So you can use pretty much any model. I will be using the Aoni Mix V6, but this is your choice. This is just a model I like. Now, a good prompt I've found is as follows. I'm just going to paste it because it's pretty long, and you can get it down in the description or read it off your screen if you have too much time. And it just has some words that help sell it, right? It has some good lighting, makes it just realistic enough that we feel immersed if we're using it in VR, but also kind of keeps that gamey look by using the Unreal Engine. Of course, the model I'm using also helps with that style. Now, what you'll see at the beginning is, of course, where you place your room description, so what we want to create today. And I'd say I want some kind of Victorian mansion, like a little spooky haunted mansion type thing, so we can do living room in a Victorian mansion, comma, spooky, creepy, dark. Let's do that. And now we want to, of course, use that LoRA we have that's trained on 360 diffusion images. And the way to do that is we check on Civet. Most LoRAs and models have a trigger word, right? And we see that the trigger word for this model is QXJ. So we can write that in there, QXJ, that triggers that. And now there's a special syntax for activating LoRa's as well. And we open a triangular bracket, write LoRa, colon, and now the exact title of the LoRa. So because I have V1, as we can see, the name of the file is 360 diffusion underscore V1. So we paste that in there, but make sure if you're following this tutorial in the future, you adjust that to the future title of this. And because we don't want it overpowering the rest of the prompt, I'm going to weight it at 0.3 and close it with another triangular bracket. As a negative prompt, I'm going to do something pretty standard. There's nothing special to do here, so I'm pasting that in there. Just that it's not blurry, it's not duplicating or cloning anything. I don't want any people or animals in there because they're going to look weird. But that's basically it for the prompt. Now, as a sampling method, I've become very fond of DPM++ 2mCaris. It's efficient, it's still good despite being fast, so I like that. Sampling steps, I'm just going to do 50, but you adjust that to however you feel comfortable. And width and height are very important because we're creating an equirectangular texture that is wrapping around us. It needs to have an aspect ratio of 2:1. That means the width needs to be twice the height. In my case, that's 1024 by 512. Batch count, I want 4 different options to choose from. And one more setting, asymmetric tiling needs to be active with tiling on the x-axis. Nothing else. Make sure Y is not on. And now we can generate. Cool, and we have a couple now. Let's take a look at these. So they're all pretty dark, like I said. They're kind of more like Baroque than Victorian per se, but I do like them. There's only so much we can tell from looking at these photos like they are, right? These panoramas, because they're so warped, we can't really imagine them well. And that's where our extension, the panorama viewer, comes in handy, where we select an image we want to view, open the panorama tab here, and press this sphere. And now we can actually spin around and look at the rooms as they are. Now you can tell there's some weirdness going on the ceiling, right? It's not really a rectangular room. That's just a limitation of this process for now. But you can tell much better what's happening here. And with this button, you can load the other images. This is kind of cooler because we have some actual furniture and stuff. We might be a little close to this wall. But what I'm looking for is a clear floor, right? So nothing weird going on the floor here, that we kind of have a seamless floor, and the same thing on the ceiling. Yeah, this looks pretty cool. There's like a weird corner there, but it's nothing that looks too like pointy, right? Like here, for example, the chandelier kind of converges in the middle, and we don't want to see that. Of course, we can edit this later, but I want to have a nice little start to work with. Here as well, it's fine. It's very dark there. The furniture is a little too close for comfort to me. And here in 3, we're kind of sitting on the furniture, so also not a good option. I personally like number 2 the best. So what we're going to do with number 2 is I am going to save this image as small Victorian mansion, because of course we're not done. We do want to upscale it and edit it a little bit, and bring it into the depth tab over here. And now we load it in here and set our depth information. Now the reason I'm doing it with the small version, not the upscaled version, is because we don't need so much detail in the depth. Our eyes can be easily tricked. So we're just going to use the lower res one. It's easier to generate as well. And I'm going to compute on GPU. And the model I have to use personally, in my experience, is the Res 101 model. The other ones don't work for me on my computer due to VRAM issues. If you want to sponsor that, let me know. I need a better graphics card. But the other ones are great too. So Zoe Depth is for indoor scenes. That's really good. I'm just going to stick with Res 101. It's fine. The first time you use a depth map generation, it might take a long time. Don't be surprised. It doesn't take that long forever. Every time, you just need to download your depth model first. So that happens automatically, and you can see what your computer is doing in this terminal window that always opens with Stable Diffusion. So that's how you can tell if it got stuck, if there's an error message, or if it's just downloading something that might take a while. As you can see, this was very fast for me. It generated our image in a couple seconds. And you can tell the model's good. It really did get some detail here in the furniture, so I'm perfectly happy with this depth map. I'm going to right-click and save it. And now we can upscale our panorama. So to do that, I'm going to go into the Extras tab and load the image in there. Set the upscaler to R, E is Argan 4X. That works well for me. It works for like more realistic scenes, and this is realistic enough that it functions well. But you can pick whatever you want. I'm going to upscale it by 4, so we have a nice resolution that we can view in VR without it looking too bad. Hit generate. Again, this might take a little while the first time you do it because it has to install the upscaling models first. And here we go. We have a nice high-res scene. Now, there are some funny little artifacts here, which I'm going to fix with InPainting now. So to do that, I'm going to send it to InPaint and make sure I'm going to copy all my prompts over here as well, so we get the same general style. Now, one reason I like this Aoni Mix model as well is much like the standard 1.5 Stable Diffusion model, there is an InPainting version, which is better for this sort of purpose. So I'm going to do that. And now we can InPaint. Of course, we could also use ControlNet. If you know that from my other tutorials, it would help with some of the details and keeping like the general shape of the furniture. But for this purpose, I'm perfectly okay just using image to image to do some minor edits. Right, so I'm just going to paint over. And now what's very important is the settings, right? So I don't want to InPaint the whole picture, which would be a giant image, right? We have this upscaled resolution. I want to only InPaint the masked area. That means it's only going to create this small little area at maximum resolution. That maximum resolution being a square of 512 by 512 in this case. Sampling method is the same, 2M Keras. Sampling steps, let's do 30. Everything else is fine. I want 4 different options and turn the denoising strength down to like 0.45 so it doesn't change too much about your image because you do still want that depth map to fit, right? And asymmetric tiling, turn that all off, make sure it's not running. And masked content, original, you want it based on the image that was there previously, and we can generate. Great, and as you can see, it really fixed my furniture, made it much more detailed and realistic. I gotta be honest though, I forgot something, and I was very lucky that this happened. It got from context what I wanted here, but I didn't actually adjust my prompt in any way to tell it what I wanted. Now I'm going to leave this one, I think. I like this one the best. So the second one. Send that back to InPaint. Make sure you reset your InPainting. I'm going to do it with the other furniture, this time adjusting my prompt a little bit. So I'm just adding red luxury sofas, keeping all my other settings the same, and make sure you reset your width and height to the correct values. This time, because it's kind of a long rectangle, I'm going to adjust my width to something more wide, my height to 512. But every time you hit send to InPaint, it's going to reset those width and heights to the full image size, which of course we do not want. So make sure you fix that. Cool. And now, as before, I'm just going to pick the one I like and then continue through the image to fix some of the more glaring problems, right? Like the window and so forth, this painting. And then we'll be back after I've done so. We'll come back to that in just a moment after I introduce you to the sponsor of today's video, Brilliant.org. If you're anything like me, you're curious about how the tech behind Stable Diffusion works. On Brilliant, I found a great interactive course that helped me understand neural networks in just one short and fun lesson a day. There's also lots more to discover. Brilliant is the ultimate platform for learning math and computer science, especially if you're busy like me but need to learn it for your job, or you just want to know more on a complex topic but prefer a laid-back, enjoyable, and hands-on approach to learn through real-life problem solving rather than just rote study. Brilliant offers a diverse array of expertly crafted lessons to suit your needs regardless of your skill level. With topics ranging from simple to advanced math, AI, data science, and neural networks, there's always something new to learn there as they update their content with fresh lessons every month. If you're at all interested in unraveling the mysteries of AI like I am, or if you just want to explore, you can try Brilliant free for 30 days by visiting brilliant.org/AlbertBosezon or clicking the link in the description. The first 200 of you to sign up will receive a 20% discount on an annual premium subscription. Let's get back to the video. Great, you have your panoramic texture now and your depth map. What do you do next to turn this into a VR home environment for your Quest? The credit to this next step goes to the video How to Build and Install Custom Home Environments by SideQuest VR. And what they say is basically you need two things. First of all, the download link is in the description. You need this Quest Custom Home Environment Startup Blender file, which is just a nice little setup that shows you a little figure that's about human height and some demo menus so you can tell what your environment is roughly going to look like when you've installed it. And you're going to need the environment converter builder, which I've downloaded here. Now, the link to this file is in the description, but if you want the current version, I suggest you join the Quest Homes Discord, where they also have current tutorials and so forth to do this, because this might change in the future. Now, what you want to do to install this, I did extract all, and then you need to find a folder in your user folder on Windows called Tools. You can also make it. It's just a good way to install it. Copy this and extract all your files into here. And once that's installed, you can go in and open this little executable file. And you'll see a couple different settings. We're going to ignore most of them for now. What we need is this button, Build and Install Environment. But you can't click it yet because, of course, you haven't exported any file. So we're going to go into Blender and we'll turn our textures into our environment. How do we do that? Well, there are two different ways. The first one, and easier one, is using my add-on that I made with GPT-4. You'll find it on Gumroad. I called it EnvironMake, and it's a very simple add-on. That's why it's also free. You could just download it right here. And it should work in Blender 3.4.1 on Windows. And what it basically does is it takes your equirectangular image and your depth map and turns it into a sphere, just like this. So let's go ahead and do that. You'll download it, install it like any other Blender add-on, and you'll find it in your N panel here. Now remember, this is a super rough add-on, so make sure everything is set up perfectly. Put your cursor in the very center of the world before you do anything. So Shift-S, cursor to world origin. And make sure your setting up here is also on active element. And now you put your texture in here, the upscaled version, and your depth map. You don't have to change the shader mode at all, just leave it on emission and hit generate. And then less than a second later, you'll find this weirdly shaped little sphere in here. And if you look closely, you'll be able to see that this is actually our texture, and it has displaced our furniture. So you can see the furniture is a little 3D, and the room has some actual shape. So this worked pretty well. Now, in case my add-on doesn't work for you for whatever reason, or you want to just do it manually, here's the long version of how to do this. So first I'm going to hide all this template stuff. We don't need it right now. And now in the center of the world, I'm going to Shift-A, a mesh, a grid, and give that grid 256 subdivisions each. So make sure that's on 256, and the size can be 2 meters. And now we're going to give this grid a new material, scroll all the way down here to emission, and set it to image texture. Now open an image texture and put your upscaled image in there. Now that's not going to look right, so you need to set the base color to black and change your specular to 0 and your roughness to 1. Good, now that's set up. And now you're going to want to go into edit mode. In edit mode, you select all your vertices with A. Now you do GZ1 and bring all those vertices up 1 meter. Now it's important you actually take a look at your texture. That could be a little difficult with all the vertices visible, so you might have to tab out. And now you're going to need to find the angle that's on the side of this, so something like this. So you can go into that viewpoint, go back into edit mode, select all your vertices, and go to Mesh, Transform, Warp. Now set the warp angle to 180. And now what you'll see it did is it wrapped the texture like this onto a half cylinder. Now you're going to want to go into this side view where you see half the cylinder, tab back into edit mode, select all, and do the same thing again. Mesh, Transform, Warp. Except this time, you want the warp angle to be 360, so it wraps all the way around. And now you'll see we have this nice little sphere. Now obviously it's on its side, so you can rotate along the x-axis by 90 degrees. Good. But you'll see it's kind of inside out, right? So you're seeing the outside of the sphere when you actually want to see the inside. That's because our normals are still wrong, which is the direction the texture is on a 3D object. So the way you can check your normals actually in Blender is to go up here to Overlays, and under Geometry, see Face Orientation. Blue means the normals are pointed that way. So this is wrong. Select your sphere, go into Mesh, Normals, Flip. So now it's all red. That's better. But of course, we're still not done. We still see the outside. That's because in Materials, we need one more setting, which is under Viewport Display, Backface Culling. Hit that, and now you'll see we see the inside of the room. Good. Now it's still a flat panorama with the projection on it. We still need the displacement. So we go into Modifiers, Add Modifier, Displace, add a new texture, click into the settings of that texture, type Image or Movie, hit Open, and we load the depth into there. And now you'll see it will have added your depth map. Now this is way too much, so you're going to have to turn the strength down, set it to 0.5 for example, and it's a little better now, but the coordinates are still wrong. So set those coordinates to UV, and now you'll see it's actually on the furniture where we need it to be. I hope you see why I made this add-on. This is a lot of steps for the same exact process again and again. So if you can, if it works for you at all, remember it's free, it's on Gumroad, just go download it and you'll save yourself all those steps. Let's move on. Now the size is all wrong, so what we can do is of course upscale it to make sense in a human size. We can compare her to the painting here, for example. So the painting should be around eye height if she's standing on the floor. So that's about correct. And now the room is a little small, of course, so we're going to want to change the scale a little bit without actually distorting the height. So to do that, we hit S, Shift, Z, and now we can change it like this, of course making sure to not distort it too much. But you'll see because we scaled it like this, from our character's perspective, everything should look correct still. We want to check there's also a camera that the add-on creates, and we can move it up to our person's height and kind of rotate around, and we'll see everything is still the right size. So that looks pretty good. And if we want, we can also go into the modifiers here and adjust the strength of it. If we want to appear a little more three-dimensional, we'll see, you know, now that's more of a sofa shape. That could be accurate. And we can also change the rotation if we want. So if we want it to start elsewhere, we can also adjust it like this. And those little dots you see are actually teleportation points. So if you're in the Quest home, you can teleport to these points, but I wouldn't recommend it because then, of course, the illusion is ruined, right? So if you stand over there, you'll see that everything is distorted. That's just one of the weaknesses of this method, but otherwise it's pretty cool. Now, if you want, you can also use some Blender features to kind of smooth out the floor. So to do that, you can apply the displacement here and also make sure to Control-A, apply the scale so that that remains, the size is correct. And now you can tab into edit mode and you'll actually see the vertices. You can kind of select this area down here that's a little funky and make sure your proportional editing is on up here. And now you can scale Z and adjust this with the scroll wheel and kind of straighten out the floor just a little bit, you know, so it makes more sense. Same thing with the ceiling. Good, and there we go. We now have our nice little environment. And now you need to get this into the environmental converter. So how do you do that? Well, you have it selected. Make sure that your object, your room, is the only thing selected. Go to File, Export, GLTF 2.0. And now you're going to go into the folder where you installed the converter, right? Tools, Builder folder, under Build. So you go in there, get this path, go there in Blender, and then make sure your format is GLTF separate. You include only the selected objects, and just in case you want, under Data Mesh, apply modifiers, in case you didn't apply anything. Just make sure it's a solid file. And then hit Export. And now in your converter, your Build and Install Environment button will be functional. You can name your package. I'm going to name it Victorian Mansion. Victorian Mansion. Then make sure your MetaQuest is connected and in developer mode. To set it to developer mode, you need to go into your app and your headset settings. Looks like this. And then connect it and hit build and install environment. It's that easy. And if everything went well, this is what you'll see in there. So this is what is going to open every time I get on my Quest. This nice Victorian mansion. You'll have your menus in here. You can select your apps or whatever, and this will be your backdrop. Remember, you can't really tell from this 2D video, obviously, but this is fully three-dimensional. The door is further away than the furniture. I actually feel like I'm in this space. And this is honestly a much simpler way to make environments than, actually with 3D. Of course, you will have some lower quality, but I think in the future it's going to be much better, and it really is just kind of fun to do. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you learned anything helpful, please like this video and subscribe to this channel. There are plenty more tips and tricks for AI and 3D coming up soon. Also, remember to sign up for your free 30 days of Brilliant via brilliant.org/Albert Bosezon. Thanks to them and you for making this video possible. See you soon, and have fun with Stable Diffusion in VR.